This channel does not claim expertise in oral hygiene or any other sort of field related to general physical health. Thus, what is said here regarding the usage of various plants and such, and various oral hygiene practices, is not to be taken as health advice that should be followed. And this channel is not responsible for any injuries or worse caused by following what is said in this video, as this video only concerns itself with cultural practices and describing them in their historical and cultural context, and is not a video for health advice or medicinal advice regarding oral hygiene or any other sort of health expertise. With that said, please do enjoy this video. This is a miswak, also called a siwak, a chewing stick, and is a traditional teeth cleaning stick made from the roots or twigs of certain trees, most commonly the Salvadora persica tree. It is also known as the toothbrush tree. As for the usage of a miswak, the outer bark of the stick is typically peeled off at one end, and the exposed fibers are either chewed or frayed to create a brush-like texture. The fibers work like the bristles on a modern toothbrush, and the user then rubs this end over the teeth and gums, just like you would have done with a modern toothbrush. So in function and usage, it isn't actually that different from a modern toothbrush. And speaking about modernity, the miswak is still used due to the fact that it has still cultural and religious significance. For example, the use of the miswak is common in Islamic culture, as it is mentioned in the Sunnah, that is to say in the teachings and actions of the Prophet Muhammad, as a recommended practice for oral hygiene. And also, depending upon where you live and the availability of plants and trees that can function as a miswak, it might actually be a cheaper alternative to modern toothbrushes and toothpaste, because certain plants like the toothbrush tree and also the neem tree, Acta indica, that has been used for miswaks, have antibacterial properties in their saps, which can help prevent plaque buildup, gum diseases and cavities in the teeth by simply killing the bacteria that are the cause of these things. So when you brush your teeth using a miswak, you have kind of a natural toothpaste already on the stick. And if you thought that you needed something more, there were alternatives that function a lot like toothpaste and also came from the same plants. In fact, the fresh leaves of both the toothbrush tree and the neem tree could be chewed directly or meshed, grinded into a paste and used as a traditional toothpaste as well, as kind of an alternative to modern toothpastes, as chewing on these leaves more or less sterilizes your mouth and prevents bacterial growth in your mouth. Though you ought not to swallow these leaves too much, since consuming them too much might cause the death of beneficial gut bacteria in your body, which might cause other health complications. So you ought only to chew them and then spit them out. Especially the neem leaves, as they can be potentially poisonous to your body directly too, as well. And this is also why I said that I do not give health advice when I'm describing this. I'm simply describing how you go about using these things as part of a cultural practice or historic phenomena, as a part of description. This is not me prescribing the use of these things or that you should try this, but rather me just wishing to describe an ancient practice, because the use and practice of cleaning your teeth using a miswak, of using a fibrous chewing stick and the leaves of these plants predate modern toothbrushes and tooth cream, and is an ancient form of dental care practice that has been practiced since ancient times. In fact, the earliest examples of these chew sticks or toothbrush sticks have been discovered in ancient Mesopotamia and Egypt several thousands of years before Christ. And the ancient Greeks and Romans also described the use of these sticks. In fact, the Romans used the mastic tree, Pistacia lentiscus, for their oral hygiene needs, both as a brushing stick, but also its resin was used as a oral medicinal chewing gum, as the sap or resin, which is just solidified sap, does have antibacterial properties, just like the previously mentioned toothbrush tree and neem tree. And like those trees, the mastic tree is still planted and still grown in various areas around the Mediterranean Sea. And though not used anymore as a tree for making chewing sticks, the mastic is still used in order to make chewing gum, just as was done by the ancient Greeks and Romans. And actually, the word origin of the mastic plant and the word to chew in Latin, masticare, and from which the English masticate descends, have actually a shared word origin. Mastic being originally a Greek word for this plant, mastike, that shares a word origin with the Greek word for grinding one's teeth, masticao. And then later that word got borrowed into Latin, where it became the word for chewing, masticare, to chew in Latin, and from which the English word masticate descends. And this connection between this plant and these later words for chewing, as you chew both the chewing stick that you use as a brush and the chewing gum from the mastic tree, and associate it with chewing generally, even more than just regular food, just shows how important oral hygiene was in the everyday life in the past, and that plants like the mastic tree, like the toothbrush tree and the neem tree were important for oral hygiene, as they represented the everyday instruments for dental care before the invention of modern toothbrushes with hair, which seemed to appear in China in the early medieval period, in the Tang period of the 7th to the 10th century AD, from which it later spread and got adopted all around the world. But even with its adoption, before modern chemical toothpaste, you still use the leaves and the sap from plants like the toothpaste tree, the neem tree and the mastic tree in order to make the toothpaste. So it is not like these plants became no longer useful just with the introduction of the toothbrush with hair. But in any case, before the introduction of toothbrushes, a miswak, or whatever name you want to give these types of chewing sticks, was the standard way of brushing your teeth. And thus you get hadiths, stories about Muhammad, where Muhammad calls upon the believers to use the siwak. Akthartu elaykum fi siwaki. I have imposed upon you many times to use the siwak, as stated by the Prophet Muhammad in Sahih al-Bukhari. And this should be read as about tooth and mouth hygiene generally, because in the 7th century Arabia, when Muhammad lived, toothbrushes did not exist. And this is pretty much Muhammad saying, please brush your teeth, because it is disgusting when you do not do it. Showing that also back in time, mouth hygiene and issues of not keeping good mouth hygiene was also still a problem. And Muhammad is actually directing this towards people that really have the means to have good mouth hygiene, because they are rather well off, and affording siwak sticks was actually not that costly or hard to do. It was not a great luxury, but rather an everyday item, just like a modern toothbrush, and thus them not using the siwak, them not brushing their teeth, is more an example of them being slobby rather than anything else. So this is more or less Muhammad reprimanding them for being that guy. You know, that guy that never washes his teeth and has always bad breath, and that you want to stay away from due to these factors. Remember, my viewers, good oral hygiene is not only a favor to your own health, but also to the comfort of those around you. Muhammad's calls to use these chewing sticks to brush your teeth and to keep your hygiene in a good condition for your own sake and for the comfort of others became later codified in the prophetic tradition as something to be followed. And today, the Miswak continues to be used in many parts of the world, especially in the Middle East, North Africa and in parts of South Asia, due to these religious traditions about Muhammad, and also due to the fact that you need to keep your teeth clean. And that was the Miswak, and I hope you liked this video about it. Please post comments and ask questions in the comment section, and I will try to respond to you as quickly as possible. Please do subscribe, as it would help the channel spread awareness about the humanities. اشتركوا بالقناة من فضلكم.